Hey everybody, so I had thought that my We Need to Talk About Chris Chan video was going to be a one-off. If you have not watched that one yet, please go watch it, because there's been a new person that and a new set of ideas and things that we need to talk about in this discussion. And first of all, if you've not seen the We Need to Talk About Chris Chan video, please go watch that. It has a more detailed disclaimer for why I will be using masculine pronouns to describe Chris Chan. It is not meant to be disrespectful. It is not meant to it is not intended to be a smack against the trans community or anything like that. Simply put, I do not believe that this is an individual who is of sound mind. This is a deeply delusional person who is not in touch with reality, and furthermore is severely developmentally disabled, and I don't think truly understands what it means to be transgendered. I mean, put it this way, we're talking about someone who, and I'm not saying this to be funny, this is just an example. We're talking about someone who thinks that being good at playing Guitar Hero is the same thing as being an actual guitarist. So, this is a person whose grasp on reality is tangential at best. That said, and also their identity as a trans person has been severely influenced by hostile and predatory internet trolls that have been trying to get them to do things like transition as a joke. So I don't think it's ethically appropriate to use that terminology in this situation. That said, I want to be very clear that if I were in Chris Chan's presence or speaking to them directly, I would say Christine, and I would use female pronouns. That is simple, common courtesy in the interest of not antagonizing somebody. So this is not meant to be disrespectful at all. Now, the other thing I want to make clear is that I myself am a high-functioning autistic, and that will factor into this. So we have seen the emergence now of a new person and a new identity in all of this, and that is someone named Isabella Janke. Isabella Janke, again, I'm coming into this assuming that you've already done most of your research. I would imagine you've already heard about this through larger channels. But Isabella Janke is a psychopath. She is a self-professed psychopath, and her behavior is completely in line with not just psychopathy, but the outer extremes of psychopathy. One thing that's not understood, now understand, I'm not a mental health professional, but I've done a tremendous amount of reading on psychopathy. And one of the things that's often not understood is when we hear psychopath and sociopath, these terms, we tend to apply them to the Hannibal Lecters and the the Norman Bateses of the world and that kind of thing, the outer extremes. Most sociopaths and psychopaths, and there's certain derivations in the term, or derivations of what each term means. They're somewhat used interchangeably, but most psychopaths integrate with society and are never, if not never outed as psychopaths, they find a way to function in the world and go about their lives, and maybe they have problematic behaviors, but they otherwise integrate and you don't know about it. That said, 4% of the population is psychopathic, or is sociopathic, I should say. So that means 4 out of 100 people. If you interact with 100 people in your day, you will have interacted with 4 sociopaths. Okay, so let's bring this into focus, because we're talking about a lot of mental health issues now, and I want this discussion around Chris Chan to be something other than a carnival geek show. I want it to be an actual productive dialogue. And with Chris Chan, I talked in my We Need to Talk About Chris Chan video, I talked a lot about how, the system, but also parents in general, fail autistics a lot of the time. Now, being that I am high-functioning autistic myself, and certainly do not carry on in the manner that Chris Chan does, I can tell you that there's likely some other comorbid problems that Chris Chan has that he's not been that have not been properly diagnosed or addressed. But when when I was talking about this, I used previously the example of a young man that I encountered a few years ago that was became briefly a part of my life very much against my will, and and I talked about this young man who was in his early 20s, that he was basically on the same slope as Chris Chan, the same pattern as Chris Chan, where the parents didn't know what to do. They completely checked out, and they were basically just indulging every one of his ridiculous bullshit whims. And I said, he was, it was the same thing if he owned multiple fursuits. He he was heavily into the adult baby and diaper fetish community and things like that. He did have one thing over Chris Chan, though. I forgot to say this. He did have one thing over Chris Chan. He was working a job. He was working a menial, low-level job. So at least they had him doing that, but he was still not able to live independently. Anyway, but it was, as I described that, I pointed out, I just said that this is not an individual who's capable of being a part of these sexual subcultures and everything, probably cannot even give informed consent. And somebody wrote in and asked me and said, what's wrong with people what's wrong with developmentally disabled people participating in these sexual subcultures? And I thought it was such a obvious thing, such an obvious idea, that I didn't see any need to elaborate on it further. But basically, the answer basically is that you're talking about somebody who has no ability to evaluate what kind of person they're getting involved with. And while I am in favor of people of sound mind participating in sexual subcultures, I think it's a great way to help self-actualize yourself, to learn about yourself, to in many ways to confront and overcome hang-ups you may have around sexuality, things like that. You also have to go into it being able to evaluate and understand that there are predators out there and that there are people that will try to take advantage of you. And a person that is that severely mentally handicapped is not going to be able to understand and evaluate the quality of people they're getting involved with. This wasn't just somebody, in this case and in the case of Chris Chan, we're not just talking about somebody who we're not just talking about somebody who is watching things on the internet or something like that. We're talking about somebody who's actively participating, meeting people online and actively participating in these groups and that kind of thing. And you can go watch the previous video if you want the full story of what I described with that individual. The long story short is that I had to get that individual out of my life because it was too disturbing, and at least hopefully resulted in that individual getting some help. But anyway, so I say that because this is a perfect example of that. Chris Chan has no ability to filter out what anybody says. He has no ability to say, this is a quality person worth getting involved with. This is somebody that's not on the up and up. He doesn't have that. Has no ability to evaluate what's going on. It's kind of like, there's a great example of an incident where he met this young woman for a date at a local mall near in his area. And it turned out that the woman was a troll, and her friends were videotaping the encounter at a distance. And midway through the date, a man dressed in a pickle suit comes walking out and walks up to Chris, and Chris says, may I ask why you're dressed like that, or why are you dressed like that, that kind of thing. And he didn't realize what was going on did not realize that the whole thing was a setup. The whole thing was a put on. I am much higher functioning autistic than Chris, and even I would have realized that, if the person walks out in the pickle suit, the pickle man thing, by the way, was something that had been used to antagonize Chris Chan online for a long time before that. If I saw that, I would know immediately that this was a setup, so he doesn't have that ability to put things together and realize what's going on. And so we come to what we've seen is a steady stream of people trying to see how far they can push Chris Chan. And we need to, previously in my previous video, I had said we need to deal with this problem of extreme autism, especially as it relates to internet access. Now we need to deal with this problem of extreme psychopathy as it relates to internet access, because that's the other side of this. See, Isabella Janke is a self-professed psychopath. And she does things that are hallmarks of psychopathic behavior, extreme psychopathic behavior. In fact, the person she reminds me most of, and I don't say this lightly, is Richard Ramirez, and the serial killer. And what made me think that was that she goes out of her way to make herself as disgusting as possible. One of the things apparently that she does is she keeps a tray of cat excrement in her room so that she can run her feet through it, and she wants to smell like excrement all the time. And that's kind of like Richard Ramirez had this big persona of being demonic, and so to do that, he stopped brushing his teeth and bathing so that he would smell as badly as possible, that kind of thing. And she has other very disturbing extreme behaviors, things like dosing a man with estrogen against his knowledge to increasingly feminize him over time, boiling hamsters alive and otherwise torturing small animals, and other extremely aberrant, disturbing behavior. And the torturing animals thing is textbook psychopathy. Not just psychopathy, but like serial killer behavior. So think about something. Earlier I said that 1 in 4 people, 4 out of 100 people that you encounter will be either sociopathic or psychopathic. And so there are currently 4.6 billion people on the internet. That means that there are more than 186 million sociopathic or psychopathic individuals currently using the internet right now. And that, that's a significant number. And here's the thing, see, I don't want to go into great detail on it, but a few years ago, I was heavily victimized by a psychopathic individual, and I don't say that lightly. And to people who know what I'm talking about, I thank you not to go into the details here. That's not what I want to get into. But the thing of it is, after that happened, I started reading everything I could get my hands on about sociopathy and psychopathy, because I never wanted to be taken advantage of by one of these individuals again. And so 2 books that I really recommend are Psychopath Free and The Sociopath Next Door. They will really tell you everything you need to know. And the thing is, they describe sociopathic behavior in a manner removed from the internet and removed from internet access. See, before, what would happen is most psychopaths, a lot of psychopaths, like I said, integrate into society and you never know, but the more extreme their tendencies get, the more difficult it is for them to integrate into society. And the thing is, psychopaths, you have to understand, literally, and again, I'm not a medical professional or a psychiatric professional, so I'm reiterating this as best I can. If there are pros out there who can describe it better, please feel free to do so. But psychopaths literally lack the part of their brain capable of self-reflection. They can self-reflect in a functional context that, they can ask, what do we need to do to not get caught again? They can do that kind of self-reflection. They can't ask themselves, what what do I need to do to grow as a person? They think they're already perfect. What do I need to do to grow as a person? What are my limiting beliefs and actions that are holding me back? How am I hurting people? Taking stock of their behavior like that. They can't do it. And so what happens is, in a world devoid of internet access, which, internet being a relatively recent phenomenon within the widespread availability of it being in the last 30 years or so. Before that, what would happen with psychopaths is they would move from one community to the next, and they would have to move every few months, so that, because they would keep getting found out, if their tendencies, their behaviors are so extreme that they can't integrate into normal society, then they keep getting found out, and they keep going from one community to the next, and they exist there for as long as they can, and then they move on to the next victim, the next set of victims, that kind of thing. And they have to keep moving on because they keep getting found out. The internet presents a new paradigm, because now psychopaths have access to the entire world. They can find people to victimize all over the world. And I promise you, it happens to be that Isabella Janke is known to be a psychopath. She admits it. Her behavior is instantly identifiable as psychopathic behavior, even just to a layman. And so it's open and obvious what she is. But I promise you that most, if not all, of the people that have gone to these great lengths to victimize Chris Chan have probably been sociopathic in some way, to some extent. I'm not in any way, shape, or form encouraging any kind of mistreatment of this of this person I'm about to talk about. I don't think they should be contacted or interfered with at all, because it's someone that has tried to move on and lead a productive life. But I wonder about individuals like Liquid Chris. I wonder about individuals like Clyde Cash, and so on. These people, these famous trolls that have gone after Chris Chan so often, their behavior is extremely consistent with what we would expect to see with psychopathic behavior. And I think that this is a case where these people are seeking out a victim. And we need to start looking at the other side of the issue. There are all of these initiatives to address cyber stalking and cyber harassment and cyber bullying and all this. And the problem is that we start trying to contextualize them around specific demographics. We've in the past we've heard dialogues around, well, women are harassed in this manner online, or ethnic minorities are harassed in this manner online. And I'm not negating that this occurs. It does. But we need to start, rather than looking at it from a perspective of demographic motivations, where we say, well, men are doing this because of X, Y, and Z reasons, or white people are doing it for this reason, or, straight, homophobic people are doing it for these motivational reasons. We need to take a step back and realize that within all of the active demographics that are reaching out and hurting these people, and to clarify, I use those examples because those are things that have been in the news in recent years and that kind of thing. Certainly, it's entirely possible for women to victimize men, which we're seeing right now, or persons in ethnic minorities to victimize white people, back and forth. It's all across the board. Anybody from any group can be an abuser or a victim. It's not limited in any capacity. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we need to take a step back from the demographic analysis and start looking at it from a mental health perspective, and start talking about, and I emphasize, we have to find a solution that does not involve limiting free speech. There's got to be a way to figure this out. I don't know what it is. We've got to figure out a solution, because what has happened, what's really happening, when we talk about cyber stalking, cyber harassment, cyber bullying, is that the internet has made it possible for sociopathic and psychopathic individuals to more easily victimize and have access to vulnerable people all over the world. That's what this is. Now, there are larger cultural forces at work that help enable this. Certainly, cancel culture, where we have Twitter, services like Twitter that can be used to dogpile on a specific topic and that kind of thing, and generate kind of a continual cycle of outrage. These feed into it, but we need to look at the motive forces within this, the people who are the actual organizers and the people actually pushing these things forward, people like Isabella Janke. We're going to find more and more examples of this coming out, because the internet allows, again, like I said, the internet allows predatory people to have access to vulnerable people on a grand scale, a worldwide scale. And the effect of dealing with of being targeted by a psychopath, just encountering one can be frustrating and confusing and scary and deeply upsetting. If you are so unfortunate as I was, to allow one into your life, and the long-term effect on me, I'm still working through it and still in therapy, and dealing with the fact, like, literally having talked to my therapist about the fact that, like, it took me a long time to come to therapy because I know that this individual thinks it's funny that I'm in therapy, thinks it's funny that I'm so pathetic, thinks it's funny that I'm so incapable of functioning in the world that I would need something like therapy. And the effect on the brain, like, you can't even imagine it. Literally, being deeply closely involved with a psychopath, especially one that is working actively to take advantage of you, it rewires the way your brain works. It changes the functionality of your brain. I have trouble now, like, I still, to this day, years later, I still have trouble forming and maintaining a train of thought in a way that I never did before, because and you notice me talking slower. I used to be much more of a motor mouth in my videos and that kind of thing, because what happens is you start, like, putting in these natural pauses, because you're it's like I'm expecting the verbal abuse to start up. Like, I'm starting, I'm talking about a person that would cut me down and shout me down anytime I started to formulate a definite, certain opinion about anything. It was a person that did not want me to be able to have a definite, concrete grasp on the world. So anytime I start to formulate an opinion about something, to this day, I get a little wincing kind of feeling. And I derail my own train of thought because I'm expecting to get shouted at. And the thing is, when you get into a cycle of abuse, what happens is you start blaming yourself for what's happening, because you don't. It's weird. It's like friends and family come to check on you, and you feel ashamed for having gotten to this point, and so you want to convince them that everything's okay. And it's the weirdest thing, and it's something that, what's funny is, I knew that abuse victims behave that way, and I still started beforehand, and I still went along with it. It's like James Randi said, no matter how smart you are, you can still be fooled. And so we need to talk about this, and we need to figure out a solution. How do we deal with the newfound access that psychopaths have to vulnerable individuals? Because if a psychopath, I am a fairly intelligent person, if I may be so bold, and and despite being autistic, a largely competent, functioning individual, and I still got taken advantage of. People like Chris Chan, are sitting ducks. And we see now with Isabella Janke, whose goal, her goal, as we now know, was to eventually drive Chris to the point of suicide and go down in history as the world's greatest internet troll. And, and again, we need to, I do think we need to look seriously at the mentality that would make anybody want to have their claim to fame being the world's greatest internet troll. But that needs to be strongly considered, and it needs to be looked at. And I want to emphasize again, Chris Chan has done things for which she needs to be punished. That cannot go unaddressed. As I said in the previous video, I think that it's the best course of option is for Chris Chan to have a lifetime commitment to a penal mental health facility, and just stay on. A prison-based mental health facility where they can just stay on him 24 hours a day. And so that's my solution there. Now, what's the solution for the psychopath issue? One very interesting perspective I heard was from an actual psychopath, and I watched a number of interviews by a woman whose pen name is M.E. Thomas. She wrote a book called The Sociopath Next Door. Not The Sociopath Next Door, Confessions of a Sociopath. And I have not read the book, but she has expounded on its contents at length, so I have some idea what she's talking about. But I saw an extended interview with her where she explained, she went into detail about how her mind works as a psychopath, and there were a number of interesting things that I think were like doorways into potential solutions and treatment options. One thing she pointed out was, she said, she made a point that psychopaths are vulnerable individuals in their own right. They are mentally malfunctioning people that are themselves being failed by the mental health system. And she acknowledged the irony of, trying to get people to feel sorry for individuals who are basically evil incarnate. But she points out that yes, there is this problem here. And in her case, what she did was she realized that she was tired of having to restart her life every few years, like what we talked about with the pattern of sneaking away and restarting. She committed herself whole hog to the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints, and lives very strictly by that code, and says that it keeps her in line, it keeps her life working. So she had enough foresight, or at least enough personal insight to give herself something she can follow that will keep her life on track. Now, apparently she is a lesbian, so I don't know how that factors into the Latter-day Saints. And yes, I know there are a lot of predatory individuals who go into religion as a cover to further victimize people. I think given her public profile as a psychopath, it would be unlikely that that's what she's doing, since she doesn't have any cover. But she talked about one thing she said was very interesting to me, and she pointed out that her partner, the woman she's in a relationship with, is also a psychopath. And she said that M.E. Thomas, the woman, said that she likes being manipulated. She, as a psychopath, likes being manipulated, and she pointed out that her favorite movie is Hitchcock's Vertigo, because she loves how it starts out as one movie, you think it's over, and then it continues going as a different kind of movie. And she loves movies with plot twists like that, because she likes being manipulated. And I thought that is so interesting, because, and again, I am not a mental health professional. This is just like the best I can do to influence the discussion in the right direction. But I thought about how, they say therapy does not work on psychopaths, because what they do is they think that, they start trying to manipulate the psychologist or the psychiatrist, they start trying to manipulate them, or not take it seriously or whatever. They basically they practice coming off as normal with the psychiatrist to try to practice putting one over on people. And I almost wonder if there could be a way of treating psychopaths that used the kind of manipulation they use on other people. Especially because thinking about it, so it really stuck with me what she said about how this is actually something being manipulated that way, the way she would manipulate other people. It's actually something she enjoys having done to her. That was so interesting to me. And I just wonder if there, we are, as we are peeling back the layers of everything that's going on with this Chris Chan story and this most current development around trolling and that kind of thing, around the recent trolling and the recent sexual assault of his mother and things like that. As we're peeling back the layers, we are starting to see real options and real opportunities to talk about these issues and to really address what's actually going on here. And I think it's for, it's very much for the best that we do that. I think Isabella Janke is a disgusting individual. I think that she should be locked up in prison for everything that she's done, and it's not just what she's done to Chris. I think she's an absolutely despicable, disgusting individual, and like I said, pretty much evil incarnate. And when I'm drawing reasonable comparisons to a famous serial killer, I think that kind of says everything that about her. But through it all, if we want to truly solve this problem, we need to find a way to treat psychopathy and sociopathy and these problems. We need to figure out ways to treat these individuals and understand them, and figure out how to if not get them functioning in society, at least find ways to limit their access to vulnerable individuals. This is something we need to seriously consider. And again, like I said, as Emmy Thomas acknowledged, it is very bizarre, it sounds completely repulsive, the idea of treating these predatory, despicable, evil incarnate individuals as victims in need of mental health care in their own right. But if we want to solve this problem, we're going to have to step back from our more immediate emotions and figure out a way to actually solve it. And I say that for the benefit of myself and everybody else who's been the victim of a psychopath. And as much as I have nothing but disdain and loathing for the person that victimized me, in becoming a Christian, something that I struggled with a lot was, how do I forgive this individual? How do I can't have any contact with this individual. I can't mend fences. There's no mending the fences. I can't, I cannot, this is not a situation where I can love my neighbor. Person can't be my neighbor. This person can't be anybody's neighbor. And so I struggled with it a lot. And maybe the best thing we can do to love our neighbors in this situations like these, and when the neighbor is a psychopath, this is not a literal neighbor, by the way, I'm using it as a metaphor, but when the neighbor is a psychopath, perhaps the best thing we can do is, if not reconcile with them directly, take a step back and try to talk about practical solutions for the larger problem. Ultimately, that may be the best way we can do right by them. Isabella Janke herself, on the other hand, needs to be in a fucking prison. All right. Thank you. As always, hopefully that's contributed to the discussion.